strange thing happened on my way to hell.
Yeah.
And I know you wrote that when you were writing several of the children's books and other books.
Right.
So that I like the title, I think. So what's a strange?
Well, it was just my
the
life
strange
story.
thing, yeah.
This one is my life story. A strange thing happened on my way to hell. I was trying to get to hell as fast as I could, and you know it.
I do.
And I'd done really, mainly, I was a burglar, and a pretty decent burglar.
As a child.
Yeah, I was a little past child. I just didn't go to school. I couldn't get along very well.
Yeah.
Right, I had some issues with that. So I missed 100 days a year in school. But I was good. I liked to come back and take tests. I was pretty good at taking tests. So I was so confused, as I say, that my car, I had an old Pontiac and had burglar tools in the back, in the trunk, along with the complete works of Shakespeare, but I didn't go to school. So I liked to read Shakespeare, but I wouldn't go to school because school bored the heck out of me, and I didn't have any. So I liked the pool hall, and I liked old men who gambled. So finally, they gave me credit for running the pool hall.
Just to get you out of school.
Yeah, because they were afraid I'd return again.
Well, your homeroom was the principal's office, so
And I was violent in those days. Is really the problem. Yeah, I couldn't They wouldn't let me have I had to stay in the. I had to meet with the counseling center. I didn't have a homeroom. I was antisocial.
Yeah.
Because if you were a teacher and I just would say, "You don't touch me, or I'll pop you," and I would pop them.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't
and I
work.
shouldn't have done it, but in those days I thought you should have heard me.
Yeah, I don't
clearer.
think I would have liked you in those days.
No. So, good burglar, good at gambling, bad armed robber, very amateurish. As I said, I gave that up pretty quickly because I wouldn't shoot the guy.
Of course not.
So
Hope not.
once I figured that out, you can't really be serious about armed robbery as a career if you're not going to shoot.
No.
So I gave that up and went back to burglary and scamming. And you know some of the scams we did as we traveled around. And I just like to laugh and have fun and gamble. And so I did that for a very long time, 10 years.
Yeah.
But it was, nobody was a bigger loser. And then, as you know, what happened is I was ready to commit suicide at 24 because I was all alone in the movie theater. I'm born on Christmas. I'm all alone watching a William Holden movie. I'm the only guy in the theater on Christmas Eve, and my birthday's next day. And I'm thinking, shoot, I'm going to be 20. I'm 24. Next 1 year I'll be 25, and I don't have a plan for life. And I was gambling, and they were cutting down the amounts I could gamble because I was pretty good at betting on sports. So I just didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, the best thing I could do is what most atheists do. You choose a time to die and you do it, okay? So I set out to kill myself, but without any, I don't know what my emotions were, but it seemed practical to me.
Yeah.
So, but the problem was I had a mother and she'd had a hard life, and I couldn't, you know what I mean. For 6 months I tried to write note after note, and I for once quit caring about gambling, and I started just betting random games like suckers do.
Yeah.
And God, I had no idea that God was involved in any way because I denied that he existed.
Right.
What he did in retrospect was I couldn't lose. So I had a $70 a month apartment, and I'd have $20,000+ stacked around on the floor of this little place. And I sent a cab every night for my food at the Southern Air in those days. And I never left for 6 months. I'm sure I was depressed or whatever else was going on.
Yeah.
But I just read books, a lot of literature and history books, but I never left. And I had everybody's dream. I was the guy who had everything. I had money, and I had a good reputation. People wanted to be me, right?
Yeah.
And in my little screwy world, I was the burglar's dream, and I'd risen out of the poverty that we had, and to have over $20,000 in cash in those days when you could buy a brand new car for $1,400 was quite a deal. And I was as unhappy as I could ever be. And you know what happened. Finally, I decided I could not I could not fix my mom if I died. And I was sort of like her husband because my father hadn't been around. So I was
You felt the weight of
I was
that
her
pain.
son, but I was
Yeah.
also her. I'd been her husband for a long
Yeah,
time
in her
at that
mind,
point. Yes.
everything you said she did. And,
Yeah. And so I just didn't do it. And so I go on, and as I'm going to say to you, I went to when I finally got married after just being invited to do that. And that very night I left my house for the first time. I met her, and she asked me a couple of days later to go to Minneapolis. I said, okay, that's how smart I was.
Yeah.
So
Lots of thought went into that.
and then finally I'd heard enough of this Christian talk back at my house. I was sick of it. So I just went to the edge of my driveway one night, and I raised my middle finger to the sky and said, if you really do exist. I'd read in Romans that everybody would be frightened at the at the final day and blah blah blah.
Yeah, but they're
and
gonna
I
give an answer.
tremble, and I'm like, not me. So I swore at him and cussed for a while like a fool, and raised my middle finger and said, if you do exist, you ought to kill me right now, because I'm one guy who will not be afraid. Now, that's just stupid. So fools come in different sizes, but this is
Fools,
about as far as an adult fool you want to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
God didn't kill me, and in fact, he sovereignly opened my eyes within 6 months, and
Through some interesting circumstances that are explained in this book.
and I was a devout follower,
Yeah.
and he ambushed me with miraculous. He ambushed me in 1,000 ways, and then I've come to realize over the years, he was sovereignly watching over me while I was petulantly, yelling at him, and that he really was the determiner. And I think on the back of the book, I say something like, God, who sovereignly opened my blind eyes, was now sovereignly bringing me to an understanding of what he'd done.
Yes.
And he is the great creator, the eternal potter. The all-wise, all-powerful God orders all of our comforts, crosses, and heart changes.
Yes.
Right? He saw my need, he pitied me, and did what I could not do for myself. He changed my heart.
Yes.
That's my story.
Yes.
So it's
The
full
most
of...
unlikely person, you,
Yes.
surprised by a strange thing that God in his kindness opened your eyes.
A man trying to go to hell
as fast as he could
as fast as he could.
and happily.
I think it was Thomas Watson who had that quote where he said, you remember in Jeremiah, I think it's chapter 5, verse 9, he says, they wearied themselves to commit iniquity.
Yeah.
And Thomas Watson took that and said that a lot of men he knew would ride as fast as they can. He called it riding post to hell, as if it'd be full before they got there. And I thought, well, that was me, right? I was wearing myself. I wore myself out trying to commit iniquity 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And in those days, I only slept about 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of damage. And I thought, why would God show that man mercy?
Yeah.
But he did, and he opened my eyes. And I mean,
It's grace
it was grace.
for you or anybody,
Yes.
even
And so if somebody says to me, do you believe in sovereign grace? I'd say, not only do I think it's a biblical idea, but it's the only explanation for my particular life, right? And I'm not as grateful as I should be probably, but I'm still grateful to this day.
Yeah.
Because now some people see me as civilized, especially since I married you. I've
It's been a process.
It seems that I'm really civilized, and people have a high
We're
regard.
working on you, honey.
It's kind of hard for me to get used to, because when I see myself, I'm much more this guy in my own mind
Of course.
than I am some picture of how people have seen me in the last 20 years of my life, where people...
It's the framework of grace.
people see me as a Bible teacher or something, but I see myself as the guy who was scuffling around, cheating people in Wisconsin, at some pub, fleecing people and scamming them and doing all those things that we laughed, and they make for a funny story when I tell it.
Right.
But
it's not a funny life.
It's not a funny life.
No.
It was a sad life, and one I deserve to have been in hell 50 years
Desperate.
now if I had my way, and I'm not.
It's only, and that is the motivation of,
To God alone be the glory is the only thing that I will ever sing.
yes.
And if you expect me to be giving you anything other than to God alone be the glory, you are going to be sadly disappointed.